The house was aggressively cheerful. Every surface in the living room was covered in plastic grass, pastel ribbons, and ceramic chicks. Martha, 15, sat slumped on the couch scrolling on her phone, utterly immune to the forced Easter joy. Her little brother, Timmy, 7, was meticulously checking the fireplace mantel, his face alight with anticipation. He was dressed in a bright yellow sweater, a stark contrast to Martha's oversized gray hoodie. "He's been here, Martha, look, a glitter trail," Timmy squeaked, pointing to a minuscule line of silver dust near the hearth. Martha grunted without looking up. "It's Mom's baking glitter, Timmy, he's not real." Timmy stopped, his brow furrowing. "But I was extra joyful this year, he likes joy." Martha finally sighed and put her phone down. "Look, just be happy, okay? It's Easter." A sudden sound interrupted them, not from outside but from the floorboards of the second story. A heavy rhythmic thump, thump, thump. It was slow and deep, too heavy for their parents who were still asleep. Timmy immediately pointed at the chimney. "That's him. He's coming back for his eggs." Martha listened. The thumping wasn't localized, it moved. It sounded like something enormous was dragging its feet down the main hallway upstairs, heading directly toward the staircase. She stood up slowly, the knot of unease tightening in her stomach. This wasn't the sound of an old house settling. This was deliberate. She walked to the foot of the stairs, peering into the shadows of the empty landing. The thumping stopped directly at the top of the stairs. A silence followed that was absolute. A profound lack of ambient noise that felt like a physical pressure. The only thing she could hear was the frantic beat of her own heart. A terrifying object dropped onto the first step. A long, heavy scroll tied with thick, dark sinew. It unrolled slightly, revealing thick, oily black script on what looked like brittle leather. It was the list. Then a massive clawed hand, gray and dirt-encrusted, gripped the banister. A moment later, the creature descended. It was impossibly tall, its head encased in a cracked, rigid porcelain mask with blank white eyes and a fixed, terrifying grin showing long, sharp teeth. It was draped in a filthy, patched canvas suit, a sickly yellow-gray that looked like it hadn't been washed in 100 years. The creature didn't move fast, but with a terrifying, slow finality. It stopped halfway down the stairs, its blind eyes fixed on Timmy's bright sweater. Timmy didn't scream. He simply stood motionless, his mouth agape, staring at the monster that was supposed to bring chocolate. Martha instinctively pushed Timmy behind her. "Get back," she hissed. The creature's head tilted slightly, a small rasping sound emerging from its grinning mask like dry leaves shuffling. It raised one clawed hand and pointed at Timmy, then at the cheerful Easter basket sitting on the coffee table. "Insufficient." The creature's voice was a low, dry scrape, devoid of any warmth. "The required joy is lacking." It took another slow step down, its massive foot grinding on the wood. Martha backed away, pulling Timmy with her, realizing the creature wasn't here to leave treats. It was here to collect a deficit. Martha dragged Timmy into the kitchen, slamming the pocket door shut behind them. The door wasn't solid, but it offered a momentary break. "We have to hide," Timmy whimpered, finally finding his voice. "No, we have to get out," Martha corrected, scanning the kitchen frantically. The back door was their only option, but it was secured with a deadbolt. She fumbled with the key in the early morning light. A loud crack came from the living room. The creature had hit the pocket door, and the wood buckled inward. She could hear the rhythmic thump of its footsteps closing in. She finally wrenched the deadbolt free and shoved the back door open. They spilled out onto the porch, the cold morning air hitting their faces. "Run, Timmy, go to the neighbors." They ran across the dew-soaked lawn. The neighbor's yard was only 30 feet away, but it felt like miles. Just as they reached the dividing hedge, a chilling sound erupted from behind them. The creature was fast. It let out a low, predatory chuffing sound, and Martha glanced back. The list keeper was running, bounding across the grass in long, terrifying leaps. It was silent except for the heavy impact of its clawed feet on the soft earth. They plunged through the thick hedge. Martha looked back one last time. The creature stopped at the edge of the hedge line, its masked face fixed on their escaping forms. It didn't follow them into the next yard. It simply stood there, watching. Then, with an unnerving slowness, it knelt down. It extended its clawed hand and dug into the soft earth at the base of the hedge. It wasn't a desperate clawing, it was systematic. The creature pulled a deep, dark hole in seconds. Then it slid its entire body into the hole, disappearing beneath the lawn without a sound. Martha dragged a terrified Timmy up the porch steps of their neighbor's house and hammered on the door. No answer. It was too early. "We have to keep moving," Martha said, pulling him down the steps and onto the sidewalk. "It's in the ground now, it can go anywhere." They ran down the quiet suburban street. The neighbors' lights remained off. The houses silent and still in the pre-dawn gloom. As they ran past a small flower bed in front of the third house, the dirt suddenly churned. A mound of dark earth erupted, and a long gray clawed hand shot out, grasping wildly for Timmy's ankle. Martha screamed, yanked Timmy forward with all her strength, and the claw missed by an inch. The creature's head and shoulders emerged from the hole, the porcelain mask slick with wet dirt, the blank eyes fixed on them. "The list requires payment." The voice was muffled by the soil, but clearer now, full of cold frustration. "You lack the necessary joy." Martha knew they couldn't outrun it. Not if it could tunnel through the ground and pop up anywhere. They had to get somewhere enclosed, somewhere solid. The park was only a block away with its concrete pavilion. They reached the park entrance, scrambling over a low, rusty chain. Martha pulled Timmy toward the concrete pavilion, a circular structure with a thick, solid foundation and no easy access to the ground beneath. They collapsed under the pavilion's roof, breathless. The concrete felt cold and safe beneath their hands. They scanned the surrounding grass, watching for any sign of churning earth. The park remained silent. The creature wasn't immediately following. Timmy was shaking violently. "It was going to take me," he whispered, clutching Martha's sleeve, "because I wasn't happy enough." "It's not real, Timmy," Martha insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. "It's just a burglar in a terrible costume." Suddenly, a loud, heavy crash came from the far side of the park. They both turned to look. The creature hadn't used the ground. It had gone for the nearest large wooden structure, the old park shed. It had smashed the entire wooden door inward, leaving a gaping, splintered hole. The dark, burlap-clad figure stood framed in the wreckage. It wasn't hunting, it was searching. The creature lumbered toward the picnic area, then slowly bent down. It picked up a small, forgotten object left from the previous day, a child's brightly colored plastic sand shovel. It held the shovel up, examined it, and with a guttural grunt, dropped it into a dark pouch on its belt. The creature was collecting items. It slowly, deliberately scanned the playground. It ignored the swings and the slides, its blank eyes fixed on the small, brightly painted wooden playhouse in the corner of the park. It walked toward the house, its movements heavy and methodical. It reached the playhouse, its towering figure making the small structure look like a dollhouse. It reached out one massive, clawed hand, wrapped it around the colorful plastic window frame, and tore the frame clean off the structure. It examined the jagged plastic, nodded its porcelain head, and placed the plastic into the pouch on its belt. It was taking anything that represented joyful play or innocent objects. Martha realized the creature wasn't just after them. It was actively destroying or collecting the sources of childhood happiness it deemed insufficient. It was emptying the world of joy. The creature turned, its head tilting again, its gaze sweeping the pavilion. It located Martha and Timmy instantly, the white eyes locking onto their position. It raised its clawed hand and slowly pulled a small, dark object from the pouch on its belt. It was a brightly colored, pastel-painted egg. Not a plastic egg, but a real, hollowed-out shell. With a powerful squeeze of its claws, the creature crushed the egg. A cloud of dark, greasy soot exploded from the shell, covering the ground around its feet. The soot quickly dissipated, but the implied violence of destroying the symbol was terrifying. The creature began to walk toward the pavilion. It wasn't rushing, it was confident. It knew they had nowhere left to go. The hunt was over. The collection was about to be completed. The creature lumbered toward the pavilion, its porcelain mask fixed in that terrifying, permanent grin. Its movements were slow, deliberate, each heavy footstep echoing with finality. Martha clutched Timmy, pressing herself against the concrete pillar. There was no escape. As the creature reached the edge of the pavilion, a small, bright object glinted in the sunlight near Timmy's feet. It was a brightly wrapped chocolate egg, one he must have dropped when they were running. The creature's head tilted, its blank eyes fixating on the egg. It reached out a clawed hand, not for the children, but for the chocolate egg. It picked it up with surprising gentleness, then slowly brought it to the permanent grin of its mask. A low, dry chuckle emerged from deep within its chest, a sound of cold, ancient amusement. Then, with a sudden, forceful gesture, the creature threw the egg. It wasn't thrown at them, but at the far wall of the pavilion. The chocolate egg exploded on impact, not with a sweet burst, but with a sickening splatter of dark, oily goo that smelled faintly of rotten eggs and sulfur. The creature's blank eyes then met Martha's. It raised its long, clawed hand, not in an attack, but in a gesture that seemed to indicate a choice. It pointed a single, impossibly long finger at Timmy, then back at the now-smeared wall. "Some joys are best left uncollected." The creature's voice was a low, sibilant whisper, a promise and a threat. With that, the creature turned. Its heavy, lumbering steps carried it away from the pavilion, back across the dewy grass. It reached the tree line at the edge of the park and simply vanished, melting into the shadows as if it were never truly there. Martha and Timmy remained frozen for a long moment, listening to the silence. The park was still, peaceful once more, the sun now fully risen, casting long, cheerful shadows. Finally, Martha pulled Timmy to his feet. They walked slowly back toward their street, not daring to look behind them. They found their house exactly as they had left it. The kitchen door was ajar, the lock broken. The living room was still filled with pastel decorations. But something was subtly, terribly wrong. On the fireplace mantel, nestled amongst the ceramic chicks and plastic grass, sat a single, plain, unadorned egg. It wasn't chocolate, it wasn't painted. It was a real gray-white eggshell, and etched crudely into its surface with what looked like a sharp claw was the word: joy. Martha picked it up. It was cold, unnaturally heavy, and felt brittle, as if it contained nothing but solidified dread. She looked at Timmy, whose eyes were wide and filled with a silent, permanent understanding. The creature had gone, but it had left its mark. The end.